Welcome back. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here on Morning Prime. And this is what also Victor had drawn. I'm holding court with Dr. Makali Molo, who is a member of parliament for Kitui Central. Also, we have with us Owen Baya, who is a member of parliament for Kilifi North, member of parliament for Seme. This is Dr. James Jikal, and also our politician Isaac Amoura as well. On the screen, just as you can see, is an editorial cartoon that was drawn by Victor there. And this has been the subject of our discussion as well. Lately, it has been DPP Haji who is washing his hands right now. And all of them, they're pointing to one accusatory finger about coercion, under duress. Yes, everyone is preparing to wash their hands there, with one trotting excuse about being under coercion or under duress. What is the independence of these officers? If we may begin from there, first of all, especially people who are asking regarding the control of budget and article, the Constitution is very clear. I can't remember just the article itself. Is it 223? Regarding, you know, how she's supposed to be very independent and under no duress on signing any document in regard to, you know, the spending of government. But she says she was under duress. Where does she stand? People have been calling for a resignation. Dr. Mukali, let's just begin with you.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Constitution, we actually have 15 constitutional commission. And
we have 15 or we have 9?
15 commissions. And all of them are expected to be independent in terms of their operation, but interdependence, because they can't exist when the government is also there. But what has happened, I think, what has happened is majority of the heads of these institutions have allowed themselves to be manipulated by the executive. If you get an example of the control of budget, what she was saying, and I have interacted with her quite a lot, because I sit in the budget committee and I also sit in the public debt committee. So we have summoned her, we've asked her some very hard questions relating to some of these expenditures we are seeing under 223. At that time you listen to our explanation, you can see that she has just allowed her office to be misused by the executive, when the law is very clear that she's supposed to make independent decisions informed by the Constitution. Actually, if you read our mandate, it says clearly that any expenditure which is not authorized by the law, she should not approve. So it gives her that leeway that if I'm convinced as a controller of budget that this expenditure is not in line with the law, then you can decline to approve. And by doing that, nobody can take you anywhere. Whether they call you, whether they do what. But you know, she did put a caveat where she said she has her life to protect. You know, that now brings another angle to the discussion. I don't know whether she was being told she would be shot dead or what will happen. But at the end of the day, the best principle for all these commissions, they are expected to perform their work as provided for in the Constitution, because the Constitution is also very clear what each commission should be doing. And there are quite a number of them. So to me, from where I sit, is the issue of allowing your office to be abused by others. And I can tell you, when the time comes for her to face the law, what she is not saying, it will not be a defense. The issue, as I was called, I was sent an SMS, is not going to be defense. She's going to face the law straight. And I can tell you there are examples. You have Dr. Koinange, who was the PS Treasurer during the Golden Back. If you read through that case, she tried to say all those things. Oh, the president called me. She was told, you are the accounting officer. All the responsibility is on you. Whatever you do, you have no excuses. So I really, when I put myself in the shoes of my friend, Daktari, let's just hope that it wouldn't get to the courts. Because if it gets to the courts, she will be in shit, I can tell you. She will have serious problems. What she's saying is just what these guys call hot air.
All right. So she's not really off the hook yet.
That's what she can't be. Don't be treated by she can't be. She has problems.
All right. I remember also we had the former town clerk.
Was it a case of somebody in Nairobi? Nairobi.
Yeah, not the town clerk. Who was this? Then he passed. No, he was a former town clerk as well. Before Kisia. Gakuo.
Yeah,
Yes.
the same thing.
Gakuo with the case. Was it the cemetery case?
Cemetery case.
The cemetery case.
Yes.
And we know cemetery case and how also the principal secretary was also embroiled in that particular case as well. But who did they go for?
Yeah.
They went for John Gakuo.
Yeah, the past no signs. They're
Because
counting.
he appended the signature at the end of the day. And he died actually in prison, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
the
There was the other case of the guy of KTB, the professor. What was his name? The one who was managing director of Kenya Tourism Board.
There are numerous examples.
Yes, who was rotting in jail because of a decision that he made. That
Yes, I remember him.
he used to have the afro.
Yeah,
Afro hair professor. He was
He's
a very
still-
flamboyant KTB boss. He's rotting in jail because of same things.
He's still in jail.
Yes, he's still in jail. Yes. But about what I would like to say is, if you look at the Constitution and the wording, you know, there are what we call independent commissions, and then there are the independent officers, which are two: the controller of budget and the auditor general. Those
The
are
Auditor General.
they're called independent officers. But I want to draw your attention to the commissions and the holders of independent officers. Are independent and not subject to direction or control by any person or authority. That's what the Constitution. So when you hold your Bible and swear to uphold the Constitution, one of the things that you need to really uphold, the first thing is what actually puts you into office. That you have enough integrity, you have enough wisdom, you have enough ability to not be subject to direction or control by any person or authority. Then it says you are subject only to the Constitution and nothing else. So if Dr. Margaret Okango comes out and says, you know, I was forced to do this, the first thing is that admission should also be followed by a resignation letter.
Indeed.
Yes, that admission itself should be immediately followed by a resignation letter. And if not, then I also say Parliament or Kenyans have a right to petition the president to say, by admission by this person, please set up a tribunal to remove this person. Or probably, I don't know whether the president the law allows the president on his own motion to set a tribunal. I don't know whether the law allows that.
It doesn't.
But it allows Kenyans to do that. You know, that by admission of this lady that she says she was forced, because the Constitution does not allow her to be forced or to be coerced. Now, if she sits there and admits before a parliamentary committee, I want to see in the next 1 or 2 days that the parliamentary committee has filed a report in Parliament to bring a motion of censure, or not even a motion of censure, because that goes beyond that. Yes, a motion to impeach this and ask the president to set a tribunal to remove this individual, because she has gone against her oath of office. And I want to go back to say this. I liked Oko, the guy who was the former Auditor General.
Edward Oko.
I think there's a time when even his life was in danger. He even was taken to court, something like that. But he stood his ground and said, it's only the Constitution that can control me and not any other person. But when we put weak officers in office that have come into power through manipulation of the system. Dr. Nyikal here sits very close to me in Parliament. In the 12th Parliament, we used to be neighbors. He used to sit behind me, and we used to do a lot of consultation. And because he's my elder, sometimes would say "Kijana, neno pole pole." But I remember the decision to appoint Margaret Okango, Dr. Margaret Okango. I opposed it. You know, in the US, you'd be counted on what you opposed and what you supported. That will be put on record for you. You'd always see that. Here in Kenya, probably we need to bring that accountability. Because I stood in Parliament and refused. Actually, I was the only one. Everybody else left, and I stood alone in that parliament. And I said, this lady cannot manage this office. Because I had seen the process in which he had come into office was through a manipulative process. She didn't really qualify to get that job. And that's what I said in parliament. She didn't qualify to get that job. But because then Matiang'i was a very powerful person, and the Azimio friends of mine and the Jubilee guys there stood by her and said, no, she said, I remember I earned the wrath of Jimmy Angwei in parliament, and he told me, Kijana, shut up. In parliament.
My people's syndrome was too.
But I stood in parliament and said, I do not think, I've looked at her CV, I've looked at the quality of person we are putting there. This person cannot manage that office under the current constitution and what this constitution requires of a person, or a holder of the office of the budget, you know. And you know, somehow things and 1 minute and the question was put and she passed, and I felt very bad. I felt dejected because I thought I was saving this country. But
you are the black leg.
Yes. And I earned many enemies after that. But here it is revealed. You know, you need a person of strong will who would be able to say, I have said no, shut the office and leave and switch off your phone and see what will happen. You know, if push comes to shove. And that is what good officers will do. Say, hey, I'm being forced to make a decision that is unconstitutional. I am thinking about my end. You know, there's a book I read which says you begin with the end in mind. Yes. How will my end be as I make this decision? Yes. And that is what a clever officer who has reached that level of occupying that office would do. Just like Oko. You know, Oko, his age, his experience, his many things, he would say, no, this one I'll not do. And he won't do it.
Indeed.
Yes, he won't do it.
Let's cross over to Isaac, because Isaac also has been shortlisted for the CS's job as well, and this is the same.
I like that one.
And we wonder also the heat, if it really comes and really push comes to shove as well. Are you seeing the end from the beginning, as Mheshimiwa Baya is putting it? So have you considered all factors remaining constant, but things change along the way, and you have your one direct call here and another direct call, that you have two of them that splits your mind on making very critical decision? How will you fare?
You know, you're making it sound like I'm in an interview panel.
But
yet, that is really the prerogative of the appointing authority to choose who to sit as essentially a deputy minister. So allow me not to comment about that. But when I listen to Owen Baya, I feel like he was part of the clergy at some point. Because he's quite level-headed about it.
Yes.
Now, Agnes Oluoch was Agnes Odhiambo was actually the founder of Opacity.
Yes.
And she was a very solid lady, actually. I remember when we were in the budget committee, Honorable Makalimu, Dr. James Mikal, we were together trying to change the Office of the Control Budget Act or Bill to give it more power. Now, you cannot have a situation, you know the name Nyakango, in Kikuyu, you just need to change to the end, to Nyakanga, which would mean somebody is not serious. Nyakanga, you know, somebody
like
is just kantankara. Somebody is kantankara, Nyakanga. You get that. So, Margaret has really failed herself, honestly. First, she said that she's under duress from the governors. Remember, that was the first statement she said. That governors are after her because she's questioning how they are spending money.
Yes.
Then the same person is telling us here that within 26 minutes, that Ukuru Yatani was breathing, into her neck by telling her to release a whole 15 billion shillings. And then later on, we saw some letters circulating on social media dated 31st of August, regularizing that procedure. Yet this communication was supposed to be happening, I think, is it on 13th of August? If I'm not wrong, or is it 4th of August? One of the two dates, I forget. So you can see from 4th of August, if I'm not wrong, versus 31st of August. I mean, the summit does not really, add up. And we know very well, there are some officers in this country who have refused to be cowed into submission just to follow a certain way. like the Kiambaa elections. The Kiambaa by-election, the returning officer was actually called to alter results, and he refused. Yes. And he said that he's the one who is going to go to court. He's the one who will stand there. Because right now, I mean, can WhatsApp messages be evidence to prove that then you are under some duress? I mean, there is an official letter that is not coerced, that has no, I mean, you are the one who has put the signature. The dates are varying. How would you explain that a communication that was happening on 4th of August is actually also properly regularized on 31st of August? Those are two different materials. In fact, even if you have to go to court with that kind of evidence, you need to really prove that the two are actually connected. You know. So I think for Margaret Nyakango, unfortunately, and I want to believe, there's a minister who I don't want to mention because now she's on our side, who I questioned her credentials of being in charge of monies in the 11th Parliament. And the then majority leader really came on me very strongly. But less than 3 years later, I was vindicated. So I think let us not have incompetent individuals holding public offices just because they fit the tribal narrative of whoever is wielding power at what point in time, especially for these independent offices, because they are the fourth arm of government. Remember the ball,
Yes.
We have the legislature, we have the executive, we have the judiciary. The reason why we have independent offices and constitutional commissions is to actually oversight, because it was seen that because of political, patronage, Parliament also would go to bed with the executive insofar as the sponsoring party is also the one that has made up the executive. So the constitutional commissions and independent officers are supposed to be the other eye. But then the quality of the people that we had after the constitution was promulgated were very high. It was very high. The quality was very, very admirable. Remember, Edward Ouko, for example, was actually, poached from Africa Development Bank. He was working there. He even was earning more than what he got when he came here. But now, the people now who are coming to fill some of these positions, I'm sorry to say, are careerists. There are people who are trying to fit into the bill rather than they qualify. Those are two different things. You go to a job and then you see whether you fit in the bill. But there are people who naturally it's like it's an honor. And that I think that is what now is a method of public leadership. That it boils down to an individual. Like the way Chebukati was able to say, I will not be intimidated when even people are throwing things at him. He had to declare what was rightfully the results of this country. Those are the kind of men and women that are beyond political inclination, that are actually patriotic to our country, that would actually, as opposed to occupy this position. Of course, every process requires that you be backed politically to occupy a certain position. But after all is said and done, it is your legacy. Now we are not talking about Ukuri Yatani. We are talking about Nyakango. She will go down history as this one person who did not stand the test of time. And I can tell you without a doubt, because of this tacit admittance, she will not be trusted going forward. And you will see, even if she is a security of tenure, that she will not necessarily enjoy the confidence that that is supposed to be for such an individual who is holding such a high office. So I think personally it is a betrayal. 15 billion shillings is a lot of money. I believe some of this money is all that is funding the Azimio protests. That one I must say without fear of contradiction. Because the bravado...
You can't just as you escape with such a statement.
I start with
that statement. You don't have any stitch of evidence. No. That is not admissible. It's not admissible.
I start with that statement.
You stand with evidence, you table here, so that we can see this is a scrap of evidence that you have, that 15 billion shillings
15 billion
is funding this particular project.
Okay, 15 billion is allegedly being used to fund this
allegedly
protest. And I believe there's an iota of truth in that. And so therefore, going forward, Deval, I think we need to be careful, because it is setting a very bad precedent. That if today you are in office, when you know that you're going to lose power, you can actually empty the coffers of the National Treasury. And I want to imagine that is what the CBK governor was trying to allude to when he was speaking during the induction of members of parliament, when he said that there are some things that have happened equivalent to Goldenberg, that kind of thing. But he never elaborated. He said that one will come out in due course, because 15 billion is a lot of money. In fact, if you look at the Eastern Bypass, the budget for Eastern Bypass is 12 billion. So you are talking about a whole road that will be constructed. How much money would have gone to ensure, for example, even the subsidy for fertilizer is a whole 7 billion. So I think let us not really, try to sweep this matter under the carpet. I believe if these monies are with people Nyakango has declared she should be able to tell us who withdrew the money, where did it go to. We should track, and that money should actually be, treated as illicit financial flows, and should be able to be recouped back to the government coffers, especially now that there is a cash crunch. In fact, civil servants are supposed to lose their allowances because of the fact that there is no money to run this budget. Now, the Kenya Kwanza is struggling to really finance its plan because of lack of resources. Yet there are individuals who are still sitting on billions of money. And if you have somebody who is a billionaire illegally and is idle, that person is a threat to national security.
Well, that is a strong statement, Richard. Yes.
Let me come in. I always like to go to the basic principle. The basic principle here.
I thought you'll defend yourself that this money is steamrolling the rallies that you're coming from. Maybe you can tell us how this money, all the air ticket, is it coming from?
When I go there, I was in Migori, I was in Wasongiro, I was in Narok, I was in Tolele. Actually, 2 days. All that time I spent my own money.
For your own tickets.
You pay for your own ticket. You go there. So I don't even remember at any one point, even when we were in Migori, any money coming from anybody, even to mobilize the people. Let me tell you something now that you brought me to back. This hustler issue that you say there's a shift, I think our colleagues have to look very carefully. The people just look for, you told me yesterday that today I will get cheaper unga or cheaper mboga or this. If tomorrow it is not there, don't think you are still where you are, because people want change, and for people who are in that level of survival, it has to be immediate. You can say give us a year, give us 6 months.
Yes.
If you don't do it, you don't. So people come there. When you look at these people, when you go to these rallies, I don't know whether my colleagues take time. Sometimes when I'm sitting, this mass of heads and people you are seeing, you may miss to actually look at the faces of individuals and see that guy, that boy, and you actually see despair. As much as they sometimes stand and shout. So this thing of spending money, why I don't want to despair, because sometimes when we're on TV and very important issues come, we bring in politics, and then you now spend more. I spent 3 minutes before I talk the principle I was concerned about. The principle I'm concerned about, these independent offices that my colleague said are not offices, commissions and institutions. The message that should go to people who hold them, if they're watching us, that the only protection you have is the Constitution and the law. Forget about the president or anybody else. They will not protect you when the time comes. And I know it because I'm luckier than some of us here, because I've lived long and I've been in government and I've seen people suffer through this. Even when the key issue of the Hague came, the commission, the police, the head of the police had to go to the Hague himself. And he was acquitted from there, but he could not say that I was ordered. You have also indicated, I almost, at that time, I was almost in a similar situation, because there was this thing that people are dying, how are they being killed, who are killing them, what was happening in the IDPs. And as a director of medical services, I had more information than anybody else. And so the issue came, what do we tell the civil society? I made a decision, which with hindsight I think helped me. I will let the civil society go to the wards, see the people and record their injuries and give the numbers. Because there is the Nuremberg principle, after I think the Hitler thing, that at a certain level, when you are holding certain offices, like in the army you are commissioned officers, you are held accountable on your own, not that you are given orders. I mean, what I was afraid of, I knew that after what happened in 2007, something was going to happen. The world couldn't stop and just watch. So I told my chief pathologist in charge of pathology, I wanted the mortuaries open to the civil society. Let them have the facts. Let them know. Because if we don't, I will go to The Hague or your neighbor or something. So people should know. And when you hold that position, when we pass that constitution, when we pass the law, it's not that you will be personally held accountable. In any case, faith, the law, and God is giving you an opportunity to be the check and the balance that the country needs. That lady Odhiambo, the former controller of budget, refused. Ouko managed to refuse. Nothing happened to them. And I'll tell you, because I've been there, when you actually stick by the law, even your boss starts to say, you know, yeah. But if you look are afraid, actually it will work. So what I'm saying in my mind, I want to just take the principle that these people who hold this, like the central bank, like the police, like now or the Auditor General, like now the controller of budget, there are many other institutions. Their employer are the Kenyans people, and their guidance when they are working is the law and the constitution. They can defy they can defy the head of state, not defy, but they can stick to the law against the wish of the head of state. Maybe they can suffer physically, but when you are taking those positions, that is what you must be ready for. Those who take those positions, those who are holding them now and are not able to take that position, they could as well. I think there are two people now that are there. The controller of budget and DPP.
Right.
Those guys should actually just leave.
They should leave.
Yes.
Okay. I want us just to wind up on that.
By their own admission, they don't deserve those positions.
Okay. Honorable Mokali, I'm wondering, since we had Margaret before you, as a committee, and you had these pronouncements that she was coerced, she was under duress. What was your reaction? I mean, you just let the word really fly.
No.
Did you get any to put anything like showing her that, you know, your constitutional mandated not to append your signature if that really goes against the grain and the law, and you just let her fly?
No, actually,
I wanted to know what really happened. Did you indicate that she should resign?
What we were discussing now with her was the issue of the 223. Because we realized that a lot of money had been approved through 223. And you know, for any payment to be made, it's hard to authorize. So there were some payments of the former regime, that is Jubilee. There are also payments under 223 for the current government, which is Kenya Kwanza government. And we were discussing really the merits and the demerits. And you know, the law is very clear. If you look at 223, the bar, you have only two scenarios under which you can spend money under 223. Scenario number one is that there is under appropriation for a particular item. That is, you didn't provide at all, or there's under appropriation. The second one is where there is an emergency.
Yes.
That there arises an emergency and the government must act to save lives. So always, anytime we are discussing 223, we ask the question, was this amount which you paid not budgeted for? If not for, if the answer is no, then you have some room to use 223. But the next question is, if it is development, normally you would not encourage 223 to be used for development, because development is something you can plan through the normal budget. But the other question is now the emergency. So as she was explaining, that's when now the issue of saying, you know, I was called, I was coerced, came up. And I can tell you the members of parliament, and the answer that can bear as witness, because answer is a public record. She was really harassed by the members, and she was told to her face that you did not act as per the law. And what you are saying, that time we didn't even, there was the exchange between her and the PS, the former CS, Yatan, the issue of messages, we had not been shown by that time. But I can tell you for sure, I like what Mwaura has said. Daktari, that's why I said I really feel for her. Because if anybody goes to parliament, if a petition comes to parliament now that remove her, she will be removed. Even if she's taken to court, she will be jailed. And let me tell you what will happen. You might save your life for a day, but then lose your life in courts. You saw Koinange was dragged through the coast back and he died. He died even before being sentenced. You can remember. Because you're tortured for such a long time. Even your body refuses to take that in. So to me, I really want to say that the use of 223, and that's what we were discussing as we were enjoying a cup of tea here. There are two things we need to do. Either Parliament comes up with clear regulations on how 223 should be used. That is an important thing which Parliament must do immediately.
Don't you think this is a good opportunity time for you as well, because you have the constitutional amendment bill?
Yeah, it could still be another opportunity.
It can be tucked in as an omnibus.
But you know what we need now is just regulations. You know, provide clarity in terms of how you need to use 223, because 223 is already the constitution.
It's already the constitution, but we can see it's sort of a lacuna that is being
taken. What is I think there are lots of grey areas which people seem to be abusing.
That's what I'm saying. So how then do we plug this? Because it seems to be navigating. We have the executive who are taking advantage of that particular provision that they don't really have to pass through the control of budget, since this is an executive office.
Yeah, that's what we are saying. Yes. Even though we provided clarity, so that we become more specific in terms of what should be funded through 223. With regulations now, you provide that clarity and it will be help. The other thing we need to do, which I also been abused, 223 allows budgets to be only changed up to a maximum of 10%. Now, there has been a question, is it 10%, because in Kenya now we are doing program budgeting, what we call program budgeting. Is it 10% per program, or is it 10% of the total budget of 3.6 trillion? Now, what has been happening, what is convenient for executive, they say 10% per program. When it's not convenient, they say 10% of the total budget.
So they keep on shifting goals.
So the thing is, we need to come out very clear. 10% per program. So that anytime you change, you change an amount, it will be 10% per program. That now you'll be able to have proper budgeting. The other thing is happening is also the issue of, and I want also Kenyans to realize that even though the 223 paid under Jubilee regime some question marks, actually, Kenya Kwanza government has even paid more money under 223. But that didn't come out because the committee approved. After consideration, it was because if you pay 223 for food, when we have problems like now food now, drought issues, those are emergencies, and Parliament will always approve. So it's only that when now you remember, like when we picked the Ruaraka one, we rejected it as Parliament. Actually, that was the first rejection under 223. Now the other two rejections is what have just happened now. The one on subsidy, and the other one on telecom. Those are the other two we have rejected. So now they are coming to 3. But to me, we are able to get it right in terms of 10% per program, and then be clear on what should be paid. We'll be helping this country. And I think now we have the deputy minority leader here with us, Honorable Owen. The government could initiate this. If they don't, we also initiated it from our side. But it is easier, for the sake of the country, it would be better if it was initiated from the government side, so that we fast track it and get it approved. Although I'm sure they might want also to use the same 223 to do funny things also like that.
But let me just say one word.
Let's listen for Ia. I wanted to say something briefly.
I want to say this briefly. You see, this issue of what is happening right now, and it boils down again to the issue that we were looking at in the Matiang'i case. Today, if somebody brings a petition on Margaret Okango and wants to be removed, people say, you know, the cases are being targeted. Why are we removing our person? This country we need to sanitize Kenyan government or governance from politics. Because the moment politics comes into public service, and that politics starts to control public service, this country will be messed. Because people will hold independent constitutional positions, not on the basis of their qualification, but on the basis of which tribe do I come from. And even when I make a mistake, my tribe will come and protect me. You know, I went to a show and someone said, no, you see, you are targeting the Kisis, you are targeting Matiang'i, now you are targeting Margaret Okango. We need to get governance issues of public service independent, so that when I'm holding an office as Owen Baya, I am holding it as me, not on behalf of the Mijikenda or the Giriama people. And that when I make a mistake, I will be judged as me, and not that it is my community. I think this country needs to move that direction for us to have really independent constitutional office holders, so that we can move this country forward.
Indeed.
The second issue that I would like to is what Dr. Makali Mulu has said. 223 is not a bad thing.
Okay.
And the Constitution provided for it because there are times when emergencies might be there, and they use 223. There are times when something has not been budgeted for, but this country requires it, and therefore you need 223. And this 223, by the way, is not only used at the national level, even counties are using it. Counties are using it. And if you hear that, or you know we have a supplementary budget, I know counties who are doing a third supplementary budget. Third supplementary budget. Now, when you go to those third supplementary budget, what are they doing? One of them is to use 223 to sanitize expenditure that was done outside the law. And the law is very clear. Before you approve a budget, you need to have public participation. But then, what you do is, this thing is unpopular if you take it to the people for public participation. So what I do, I keep it on the side. I wait for supplementary budget. So I sneak it in without the people's participation. You are actually doing a very unconstitutional thing. The Constitution says budget must be approved first. The first step is public participation. But you know that if I take this to the public will reject it. So what do? I wait for supplementary budget. Sneak it in, because the time for supplementary budget does not allow us to go to
for public participation.
Yes. So you quickly fix it in there, pass it a supplementary budget. You hide under 223 because you want to do things that are unconstitutional. Because one of the principles of this constitution is public participation. Secondly, if you look at 223, Makalimulu said that even this regime has used 223. Yes, it has 223, but has it broken the law? Was the expenditure warranted? Because if you want to buy Helios of Telcom and you want to use 6 billion, and yet there are certain question marks about Telcom. I questioned the former PS, the former CS for Information, Musheru, about who owns Telcom. In the executive order, Telcom, if you can look at the executive order that President Uhuru had issued on the mandates of Musheru, you see Telcom as one of them. Actually, Telcom is very clear that it was one of his mandates. Then he comes to parliamentary committee and says, no, Telcom is private. So I asked him, so how does the president put Telcom, which is a private institution, under your docket? I asked him, the assets of Telcom. Telcom is one of the richest. It has a huge piece of land that was worth billion in Malindi, the center of Malindi. It has many assets in this country, lots of assets in this country. It's worth billions. Then I asked him, how were they transferred? How are they now in private hands? And he kept on saying, no, it is not me. Go and ask the appointing authority. But I asked him, the president appointed you as a CS in charge of Telcom. Then they come back and say, no, Telcom is private, but we want it back into government. But then one fundamental thing, how many years was Telcom in private hands?
Good question.
How many years was it in private hands to warrant now that it must move back to government? What informed the decision to move Telcom from public to private? And what informed the decision that now you want to bring it back to government? The question is, had it gone to public participation, would have Kenyans have said? But you see, an executive order was issued and things were done under the carpet. Before you sell Telcom, please come to the public and ask them. That is what constitutionalism is about. But Telcom went dry. Then now you come and use 223. Is it an emergency to buy Telcom back? Does it warrant use of 223 for you to pay 6 billion shillings for Telcom? It doesn't. That's where the law is broken. But if you look at 223 in itself and what probably the current president would want to use it and minister would want to use it, they have not broken the law. And that is why I say, you're trying to cover the problem that Margaret Okango did with and say, even this government did this and this. Yes, the government used 223 because it needed money which had not been budgeted for to run its programs.
But what would we say then regarding the deputy president, where we had all this 30 sum of money
Yes.
Sorry?
The 1.5 billion.
Yes, it's the 1.5 billion. Just before even the swearing in, all these monies were being moved. And we wondered, okay, you've not even been sworn to office yet there are 300 millions. There was an activity that was really happening in the office of the president under his directive.
Let me just tell this because these are facts, and these are facts that Kenyans must face. One, the office of the deputy president under President Uhuru had been stripped of, one, its budget, its powers and functions. You have a new deputy president that is coming in.
He's not been sworn in.
Yes, he has not been sworn in.
Do you have a mandate to do that before you're sworn in?
Let me explain this, the context first. Let me put in context, then I'll be able
Before
to
you even go to the context, we want to know just the bare minimum.
The bare minimum is...
Do you have the mandate before you're sworn in? Because you've not been sworn in. How did this money is also just... how do you give this directive without you? Yeah, well, you know, you're president.
In fact, my
on paper.
My
Deputy president.
My discussion on it was, who was in charge then? Was it William Ruto when this money was moved? It was, William Ruto could not have made a decision about expenditure in this country before he was sworn in. So somebody in the regime that was handing over power made those decisions. Rigathi Gachagua could not have gone to the control of budget or to the minister at that particular time and say, we want money for this and that. You know, somebody, that decision was not made under William Ruto before he was sworn in. He could not make that decision. Somebody in the previous regime made that decision.
But Mheshimiwa Baya, with all due respect,
yes,
that will not really have come from the other side of the spectrum.
Yes.
That all these monies should be moved
to
the Gazi. Yeah. So who made the decision then? If it was not made by, you know, the current administration...
My colleagues, I want to ask this question. Can a president who has not been sworn in make an executive decision?
Can a deputy president who has not been sworn in also give directives on all the exchanges of this money?
I think there has been a very clear explanation by none other than the deputy president himself,
yes,
Rigathi Gachagua, on Sunday, and I want to reiterate for the purposes of clarity. The office of the deputy president had a budget of 4 billion,
yes,
which was reduced to 1.4 billion.
Yes.
And personally, I can say, and Mheshimiwa Wenbaya is here,
yes,
even the tea we used to take in Karen,
yes,
was being financed by the deputy president in person.
Yes.
It was such a shame, let me tell you, that, you know, the deputy president then, our president, had to go through all of that. So before, when now power had shifted, Ukuri Yatani was still the
yes,
minister for finance. So they now, and this happens a lot in budget making, you now load the 1.4 billion into the system so that it is accessible for use. They were not even doing the repairs to that that office. So they were just trying, in my honest opinion, let me finish. To regularize the process and kind of to see that now, because they were too ashamed of what they have been doing. Remember, under this administration, the office of the deputy president has got a principal secretary, who is an accounting officer. Even the prime cabinet secretary has got a principal secretary. I think they have two. Yes. But in the previous administration, they didn't even have a PS. For you to take coffee or tea, you had to get impress from State House. Remember, the senior most accounting officer, if you can call him that way, which is really not the case, was the principal administrative secretary, who is just below the PS. And Dr. Nyikal was a PS before, he can tell us even better. But that is the whole issue. It is not monies that Rigathi Gachagua, as deputy president-elect, was requesting for his own use. These were monies that had been appropriated. The office was not able to run, and people are now trying to make sure that everything was running, because now there was change of guard. And you know, Debal, let us face this country, face the reality. This country is driven by politics, just like any other country anyway. So when a new administration has come on board that they didn't expect, you cannot therefore come and say that then that was a request by the deputy president for his cars and what have you. And further to it, let us not compare oranges and eggs. Somebody who is stealing 15 billion and a formal request for monies to run an office, those are two different issues. For example, is Telkom Kenya, and I stand guided, really a going concern? Can we even know the market share of the telco in this country? For it to warrant it being worth 6 billion. When people are complaining that they were not given monies for subsidy for maize, maize flour for 4 billion, when another 8 billion for fuel cannot be accounted for. Now, those are monies that have already been expended. It is very different from a request to fund a constitutional office that have been deprived of its own, money so as to efficiently run. And we really thank God. God is very gracious that we really, with the revelations that we are getting to know, that actually the deputy president then was able to sustain the momentum, because we kept on hearing people saying that pesa yake itaisha in the next 2 months, atakwisha. Now we understand the reason why. And I want to say this categorically, that nobody should be treated in such a manner. Even if you have political differences, when you legitimately occupy an office, that should be the case. And I'm sure Dr. Makali Mulu, because I have been to Kitui Central, and I know how he has really done very well as Member of Parliament, even taking care of disabled kids. He will be the governor of Kitui after Malombe.
Amen.
But I also want to say this.
On the 14th of March.
Exactly. Just like we've done Sangatanga and Keleweke on your show. Now, many people are really watching, like Kego from, in Wareng and my friend Bangombe. Now, the issue I'm trying to say is this. Deputy governors in many of these counties are treated very badly. Some of them don't even have a chief officer to their name or a CEC. They are made to be just, flower people there. They go to offices, take tea, only fuel their cars and what have you. At least even there, they get some little kind of facilitation. For our deputy president, who I really thank God that he was elected president, he had nothing completely. The idea was to ground him, because they knew if he was that popular without money, suppose he just have some little money to oil his movements and what have you. But thank God that Kenyans of goodwill came on board and all of that. I don't know whether that is the reason why people are saying we should boycott eggs. I don't think the president has got a monopoly on the eggs in this country. But I thank God this is a hustler government in the world, because we have no businesses to defend ourselves on.
Thank you.
Somebody cannot attack any business that Owen and I own.
Okay, all right. I think I interrupted the buyer so that we are due for a station break. You can actually just summarize your thought, or we can take a short break. Let's take a short break, then we...
I have to say something about 223.
About 223. Yes, we're still on 223.
Yeah.
Right, with these revelations about telecom as well, how it was went into the private sector, back to the public. We just wake up one day.